RedZoneSports.bet, the British home of American sports.
Hello and welcome to the studios of Red Zone Sports. We are the Sports Heads and we'll be taking you through some of the news items in the playbook ahead of the divisional round of the playoff games. I'm Simon Millen from Lindy's Sports, joined by two fantastic guests this afternoon. Sam Morgan from The Verge magazine, and that man needs no introduction.
Because
I've forgotten your name, though.
Yeah.
Not true. Mike Carlson,
from everywhere.
The doyen, I'd say.
Doyen is feminine.
Doyen, well, you know.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
The doyen of
I've been around.
NFL punditry. Let's have a look at some of the news items this week. Obviously, the coaching carousel is the big topic. Green Bay have made a few changes. And also Chicago have made a big change. Mike, tell us a little bit about Matt Nagy.
Well, Chicago's the most interesting one because I thought, and a couple of times have said that to me was the best opportunity of the ones going. It depends a bit on how much you like Mitch Trubisky, but that's why Matt Nagy is there. They wanted to get, everybody wants to kind of follow the Sean McVay thing and get a young, inventive, creative offensive coordinator. But especially when you've got a young quarterback who needs work, that's a good idea. And when Nagy took over the play calling for the Chiefs, there was a marked improvement in Alex Smith's play, the team's play. Not that Smith's a young quarterback or needed that. And it appeared to me that Andy Reid took the play calling back during the game against Tennessee, although he said they were both calling plays, but that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the other key thing in Chicago was that by going out and getting Nagy now, and not, say, waiting for another one of the coordinators whose name has come up. They keep Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator, which they really wanted to do, and Chicago's got a really good defense. Their defense kept them in a lot of games this year, which they had no business really staying in, given their offense.
Sure. It looks a good fit then. Sam, what's the biggest sort of coaching change from your point of view? What's caught your eye this week?
I mean, to be fair, we're going to go on what Chicago are doing. I think that it's not so much the announcement of Nagy, it's what Mike's just touched on there, is they've acted really quickly, and I wonder how many other teams might come unstuck waiting for someone to obviously come to fruition. But I think that they've made the best move there by doing it early, and I think Trubisky probably does need someone that can actually play or decide the offensive calls from the side and give him that little bit of help there on the coaching front. And I think again, he is a coach, not just a head coach. I think sometimes the head coach kind of distance themselves sometimes on the practice field a little bit more than when these guys are there. So I think if Nagy might be able to put his arm around Trubisky and give him that chance to obviously to kick on. My only thing that probably on the downside of that is how much maybe Alex Smith was reliant on someone like Kareem Hunt actually when the plays were coming, a lot of running plays.
And that was what Nagy did basically. He rejigged he got the offense back to what was making it work early in the season, which was Kareem Hunt, and everything else kind of developed off of that. And if Kelsey hadn't been hurt, the second half of that playoff game might have been very different because they really only had 3 offensive weapons, nothing from the wide receivers. It's interesting too that a number of coaches dodged the bullet or were rumored to be losing their jobs, or in Pete Carroll's case, retiring. Ron Rivera was never in trouble, but Rivera's fired his offensive coordinator, Mike Shula. The Seahawks have fired theirs, Darren Bevel, and
I was surprised.
I
was surprised at the timing of that because it seemed to take a little bit of a long time. And as Sam touched on briefly, the timing is not fantastic. They may have missed the opportunity on a few of these.
Yeah, and it's hard with coordinators because you're not going to go out and get another team's coordinators, which means you either have someone internally you want to promote, or you have your eye on someone who's in a lesser position, or maybe even out on the market, already.
But then you look at someone like that. The biggest hire, from my point of view, was looking at Green Bay, and they brought in Mike Pettine, who used to be at Baltimore, worked under Rex Ryan at the Jets. He's got a really, really interesting pedigree. And the players he talked to, he's a real analyst. He's talks softly, carries a very big stick and a very hard stare. And
he's unusual too, in that he came from high school to the pros.
And the thing with this, I mean, what I love about him, he took a chance, and I like guys that are going to take a chance, and he's going to do exactly that in Green Bay. He took out his pension fund without telling his wife, so that he could take a low-level paid job, and basically got the job, and everything snowballed. There's a thing for ladies out there. Trust your man.
Trust your man.
Trust your man.
And became head coach of Cleveland. But there's a great documentary about him and his father.
Right.
His father's a legend
boat builder, wasn't he?
in central Pennsylvania football coach, legendary football coach. And in the documentary, he and his son play twice in the season. First in the season, and then for the state championship.
He was actually working for his father and doing bottoming boats or whatever it was they were doing.
And so that's an interesting one, because Green Bay also changed. New general manager, promoting from the inside when Ted Thompson left. So Elliot Wolf, who's Ron Wolf's son, he immediately left when he didn't get the job.
And of course, Joe Philbin comes in as
Joe Philbin and Mike Sherman both coached at Worcester Academy, which is one of the teams we played in high school, and just for a year, I think the two of them were there.
Wow.
You
played when he was coaching, was that?
No, it was after that.
After that,
yeah,
right.
When they had bars on the helmets.
It's interesting you say about trends. You've mentioned trends all throughout the shows. Yep. The NFL is now following that of bringing in the young coaches again, but it's not just that. I just think it catches the old school guys off guard a little bit when it's almost they're looking at their play cards and they're thinking, right, they're probably going to do this or that at this time, and it's just completely opposite. And I think now people are going, we don't want to be caught off guard now. So I think you'll see even more so next year with some of the sort of, I don't want to say old, I say more seasoned chaps that are there at head coach roles might actually find themselves a bit unstuck a little bit. And I'm not saying someone like Belichick's suddenly going to, we see the Patriots take a nosedive. But they, to be fair, this year we've seen them caught out, and their defense is one of the worst in the league, probably because of being caught out on a few actual different plays.
But not in terms of points allowed, which is the key thing. You can't you almost can't understand how they can give up so many yards and not be giving up a ton of points. Green Bay will become more aggressive on both sides of the lines, less finesse.
Mike Pettine,
the same thing.
He likes what he calls bitch kitty linebackers, and so I love that. I love that phrase.
You could see that in Baltimore when he was a defensive.
And you can't learn under anyone better than Rex Ryan.
But it's a good point Sam made about the NFL's a copycat league. Something works, everybody wants to jump on and try the same thing. I think it was Mike Tenier tweeted a couple of days ago, said NFL coaches are like guys who've eaten in an Italian restaurant for 25 years and never had anything but eggplant parmesan.
Talk about Mike Pettine. I mean, it's a strange one. He was a head coach of Cleveland. They went 10-22,
which looks great.
I was going to say that in a 2-year period, and now in the last 2 years they've gone 1-31. I mean, it seems like another bad move from the Browns in that respect. But any other coaching changes that sort of caught your eye, Mike?
No, I think that's pretty much the ones.
Okay, Alex Smith after the playoff defeat last weekend. A lot of people are questioning where he goes next, if he goes if he goes anywhere. Where's the best fit for him, do you think?
A lot depends on whether Washington get rid of or lose Kirk Cousins, because that will have a knock-on effect. But Washington would be a good fit for him. Denver would be a good fit for him, although I can't see the Chiefs trading him to Denver. That would be insane.
Depends if they've invested a lot in Patrick Mahomes.
Jacksonville would be a good fit for him if the Jags decide they want to move on from Blake Bortles, which they might well do. Miami maybe not so great a fit. Buffalo perhaps would be a team that's interested. It's hard to tell now which, you've got Bortles, you've got Tyrod Taylor, you've got Tannehill maybe coming back, maybe not. Are these teams going to want to move on?
2 ACLs as well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot depends on the draft positions as well, doesn't it?
It depends on the fit. I know he's got a strong arm. I know that he does work well with a sort of every down back as well. That I'd actually like to see him at the Cardinals. Just purely because I think
it's a good shout, actually.
But it also depends on the coach.
Depends on who they hire as a coach. He wouldn't fit Arians all that well, but another coach,
If the coach comes right, it's almost a good pairing. If you're going to change up things now, it would be like head coach, Alex Smith in there. You're going to have David Johnson obviously come back. You're going to have, I'd expect, at least one more season of Larry Fitzgerald.
There's still tread on the tyres as far as Alex Smith goes.
I mean, blaming him for the defeat is really wrong.
You touched on injuries. I think if they didn't have those, they would have probably gone a little bit further.
let's have a look at the draft. We sort of touched on it briefly. We've also touched on Cleveland. If you're the Cleveland Browns, you're picking 1 and 4. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Mr. Kevin Costner, GM. Who are you going to take at 1, and who are you going to take at 4?
If I'm Cleveland, I'd put Hugh Jackson in a rubber room and I say, what do you want from your offense? You know, what did you really think that Deshaun Kaiser could play for us or not? Because you spent the whole season, instead of nurturing a rookie, throwing him under the bus at every opportunity.
Knocking his confidence,
did you really think that what's his name from Stanford? Kessler was the answer or not? You know, did you think he was going to be another Andy Dalton, and that's why we signed him and put him in as a starter, or not?
Brock Osweiler
RG3 was he a fit? You know, or not? Osweiler, he gets a pass on because they basically signed him to get the money in the draft picks that they were paid for.
That was one sensible move.
So you almost have to say they've got to take a quarterback, right? There's no point in accumulating more draft picks by trading out of the #1 spot. If they don't, and they take, say, a quarterback at 4, let the dust settle slightly and take who's ever left, what do you do with Kaiser? You know, I'd almost rather bring a veteran in, hard as that may be, to persuade someone to come in. Yeah,
there's a lot of talk about Alex Smith going.
Yeah, but you know, does he want to go into such a bad situation? And then they say, okay, you take Shaquan Barkley from Penn State, the best running back in the draft. Well, Crowell and Duke Johnson are not a bad pair of running backs.
Sure, no, I get that.
And they don't use them. They don't seem to get the best out of them.
This guy is an elite prospect.
Yeah, no, I understand
absolutely
that.
Elite, and I can see. My theory is that they take him 1. If I was doing that, I'd take him as 1 because you know that the Giants are going to be looking for a quarterback. But
well, 2. Maybe and maybe not. Again,
but then if that's the case,
you've got a new coach coming in. It's like, does he think Eli's got 1 year? 2 years? No years. Does he think Davis Webb is actually a quarterback of the future? Because you know, I thought Davis Webb was a great fit for Ben McAdoo, and McAdoo never played him.
No, it wasn't given the opportunity in that respect. But you look at the Colts at 3; they need a running back badly. They're looking at Barkley. They look nailed on for Barkley. So if the Giants don't take a quarterback, the Colts certainly aren't going to take it. I don't think they are. I don't.
Assuming Luck is coming back healthy.
Yeah. You've got the pick. If you take Barkley as 1, you've got 2 quarterbacks possibly on offer. You've certainly got one of the top 2 at 4. It seems an obvious thing. If you're going to bring them both in, you know, 2 specialists at high draft picks, and it's, you know, admittedly it's a very, very deep running.
I'd go a little bit different to you guys. So I think
that's fine.
In that, I look at someone like Calvin Ridley at Alabama as a wide receiver. They got Josh Brown obviously sitting there as well. So you add in to the arsenal there. I don't think Kaiser is as bad as people think. I think you're right.
Agree.
He has been thrown under the bus. So for me, at 4, I'd probably almost look to try and, if you could, sort of strengthen up the offensive line a little bit, or somewhere along the lines to actually give him some more time. You're right. The running backs aren't horrendous. So it's actually, I wouldn't say it's wasting a pick, because if the guy is that good, yes. And we've seen what's happened with Kareem Hunt, Fournette, and the guys like that obviously coming into the league. But why not strengthen the areas that are, for me, to kind of stand out and actually give a quarterback some time? Then maybe on a free agency or a trade, bring in a vet to coach Kaiser that little bit more when he has time. Because it doesn't matter how, the elite QBs that can just on the snap know exactly where they're going, know where their man is, you know, don't need that much time. But even just an average or above average QB needs time. And without it, which they're not giving him, it doesn't matter who comes in.
There's a lot of teams, I think, a lot of guys who don't want to waste a high pick on a running back or a wide receiver, because both positions are seen as kind of fungible in NFL terms. And
especially with
Kareem Hunt,
back.
Kamara, you know, not high picks at all. A lot depends on the situation you put. Ezekiel Elliott, high pick,
but
great pick. Trent Richardson.
He's a high pick and a great pick, but he's also a system player.
Yeah,
he
went
wouldn't
into a good
necessarily fit
situation.
anywhere else. Exactly.
Yeah, Fournette. Jury's still out whether it's worth that high a pick, but I think so. That
he's
Pittsburgh,
dropped off,
they don't win
admittedly,
that
but that's
Pittsburgh,
might be hitting the rookie wall slightly.
Yeah, and the injury wall. I mean, running backs are the most injured position, in the league. You get the least bang for your buck.
I think Fournette, I still say this is an underlying issue when he had the suspension. I think there was something there that has been masked, because if you look at his dip in form, it's been since the suspension. Yeah.
Great chat, guys. Thanks very much, Mike, Sam. Remembered your names, that makes a change.
That's
doesn't
very
it?
good. Now all we got to do is get you to remember the other side of the ball when the draft comes, because there are defensive players out there.
There are indeed. Miami need them. We're going to have a look at the big games this weekend. Obviously, divisional round of the playoffs straight after the break. So be prepared, chaps. We'll see you in a little while. Thank you. Bye bye.
Hi, I'm J.R. Lemon. I play Devin Wade on Madden's Long Shot.
I'm Scott Porter, a.k.a. Colt Cruz, the cruise missile.
And make sure you subscribe to what?
SportsHeads. Click that subscribe button, y'all. Come on.
Bring it.
RedZoneSports.bet, the British home of American sports.
Hi, welcome back to the Sports Heads. We're in the studios of Red Zone Sports, and we're going to go through the divisional round of the playoffs. 4 fantastic games this weekend, chaps. We're going to start with the Atlanta Falcons at the #1 seed Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah,
an interesting game to start.
And the problem with this week, well, all the playoff weeks, is when there's only 4 games, you spend all this time microanalyzing. When there's 16 games in a week, you sort of look at it and you say, oh, my gut says this, and yeah, that's
and generally the gut's right.
And that's And now you sit there and you get, and the big theme this week is going to be quarterbacks, and how much do you trust the quarterbacks? How much importance do you put on the quarterbacks?
And obviously Nick Foles, obviously.
Yeah, obviously if Nick Foles weren't starting and Carson Wentz was, Philadelphia would still be favored at home. The Falcons are coming off a really good win against the Rams. I thought Matt Ryan, a couple of things that haven't been noticed. One is Michael Brocker's injury really hurt the Rams in the second half. Yes. Their defense looked tired, got up front, looked tired. Aaron Donald got mauled the entire game. I mean, he could have really sued, had guys arrested. Someone put together on the network a clip of, him in the first half, and on every play he was being held by at least one player, sometimes 2.
Says the New England guy.
If they can get away with that against Fletcher Cox, and if they can get away with the Seattle-style pass defense, which is basically you keep your hands on the receiver's arms and then let go as the ball comes and try to knock the ball away, figuring that if you knock the ball away, the referees aren't going to call a flag. They didn't. They didn't even call Deion Jones when he had Sammy Watkins in a bear hug at the line of scrimmage.
This goes down to officiating all throughout the season. I mean, we've both got sort of fairly strong views about it, haven't we?
And because the calls, because the holding calls and the PI calls are judgment calls, there isn't the consistency that you would want to see from it. Not like the old days where you just can't touch the guy till the ball, once the ball's in the air, you can't touch him anymore. Or once he's beyond the 5-yard check line, you can't touch him anymore. That was easy. When you had to keep your hands in to pass block, that was easy. Hands go out, you're holding. Hands stay in, you're not holding. Anyway, so I think a lot goes the Falcons' way. And I think the other thing that escaped a lot of attention was Matt Ryan had a tremendous game.
He's been a lot safer with the ball.
I think and he avoided the rush. He did a fantastic job of making room for himself, avoiding being sacked, keeping plays alive. And to me, that was almost the key to the game. And I think if he can do that against the Eagles, who will come.
I think to be fair, I think actually to be fair, we've knocked Steve Sarkisian quite a bit throughout the season, but actually I think he called a really good game against them.
They were doing the stuff that got them there last year. Whether it's coincidence or not.
It's maybe a comfort, and you've got that defense as well. Maybe there's more confidence in the defense than there has been. They've been playing, pretty decent in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
When the defense picked it up in the last 4 or 5 games of the season.
But you've also, Sam, you've got a dome team going to frigid confines of Philadelphia now. I love my stats. The Eagles are 4-3 against teams with a winning record, whereas the Falcons are 5-5 against teams with a winning record. They've had a tough schedule. The Falcons, to be fair. Philly have rested, obviously. They've also got a pretty decent record against them. The Falcons have lost 7 of the last 8 trips to Philly, so it's not a place that they've traditionally played well.
That must go back to Randall Cunningham.
Possibly. Well, including the 2005 NFC Championship game as well. They lost that one. So it's not the best place for them traditionally.
Yes, the leveler is it's not Wentz with the ball in his hand. It's going to be Nick Foles, and the jury's still out on Nick Foles for me. There are times you're like, oh, they'll be okay. They'll be okay with Nick.
The 4 touchdowns against the Giants, for instance. I mean, he can do it when it's.
It was the Giants, though.
Exactly.
But as I say, we know he can do it, and it's not like he's been in the league for 5 minutes. You know, I think the rest period will certainly help the Eagles and their style of play as well, because they are aggressive throughout the whole game. Now, it's only so long you can do that each week, so I think this break came at the right time for them. The Falcons, yes, were convincing against the Rams. They looked like the Falcons that could sort of go and progress, to certainly the sort of conference game. But I just think the rest will help the Eagles in this one. If it was a leveler in the league, and they were just coming off this a game the following week or previous week, I'd probably say the Falcons might take it. But for me, I'm going to.
You're also going west. You're coming out of the dome. You're going west coast to east coast. It's not an easy thing. They've been playing playoff football for the last 3 weeks.
And it's been a tough schedule, like you said. The whole season's been.
The interesting thing with the Rams was the Rams were, in the end, 4-5 at home this season. They were 7-1 on the road.
They looked a little bit rabbit in the headlights. I mean, it was a 13-0 half time up until just before half time.
Foles processes slowly. That's the thing with Foles. And Atlanta's defense is quick enough in the back seven if they don't blitz a lot, which I don't expect them to do that much, because I think they'll be trying to make Foles take time to make decisions, because he takes longer. That will allow the front four to get to him, and that, to me, sort of pushes me toward Atlanta. And again, it's because of Foles.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one. 3-point dogs at home.
Now, home teams win 75% of the games in this round, and Philadelphia is the first #1 seed ever to be a dog.
Yeah.
But one of the
says
four
a lot,
teams
doesn't it? It says a lot
loses.
about Foles. That's the key question. I'm going to hope that the running game helps him out. I think they've got, obviously got Jay Ajayi. We haven't spoken about him. He seemed to have carried the workload when it was needed, especially against the Giants. I think the betting line is 3. As we can see, the Eagles are 3-point dogs. I want Atlanta to win, but I actually got a sneaking feeling that Philadelphia will cover that line.
I think Philly will, yeah. I think Philly will be able to do it. But in terms of sort of if you're just going to go outright to the history, but big game players do turn up. I mean, you've got someone like Julio Jones, obviously there. You don't know what that guy is capable of until these big games is when those sort of players turn up. Have the Eagles got someone that is a real go-to, step up and take the game by themselves?
I do worry, as much as we said Sarkisian called a great game, I did. I do worry that Matt Ryan had been targeting Julio Jones far too often, and it was.
Well, what he was saying, he wasn't getting the ball enough. He actually caught more passes for more yardage this year than he did last year.
But towards the end of the season, it's just saying, we know where it's going, and defense is good.
And if you're defense, you have to hold him, which means 4 catches, 80 yards, something like that. And
he's still going to get the yards against you.
It's the running backs that are the other key for Atlanta. If they get both Coleman and Freeman involved.
I'm glad they've started to use Coleman a lot. Well, they had. There was a dip in the mid-season where they stopped using him virtually completely.
If they throw the ball to them, there's openings.
It's a speed, isn't it? Yeah. It's a speed. Okay, let's have a move on to Tennessee Titans, 13.5-point underdogs, going to the New England Patriots. Now, New England Patriots, Seth Wickersham's ESPN story obviously plays into this, and that's going to be the
psychological trauma.
We sort of touched on it a little bit last week. Actually, we thought that something was going to come out. There were underlying rumblings that
if Brian Hoyer comes into play, imagine what the timelines are going to be.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, is it a story, or is it, as the Patriots say, it's a non-story? Who are you buying or selling? Are you selling Seth Wickersham's story that all is not well in New England? And
I'm kind of selling it because I think the big picture overwhelms everything else in New England, and I think everybody sort of puts that all aside, and for the focus on the game. If there's as much animosity as Seth says, then what I suspect we'll see it after the season's over. And if both coordinators leave for head coaching jobs, which seems eminently likable, if Bill wanted to, if there was enough animosity there for Bill to want to, hose the team, he would leave then. Now you've got no head coach.
He's already said he's not going to.
Exactly.
Absolutely. But then he's from the Saban school of.
That's true too. Well, Saban's from the Bills school.
Exactly.
That's where he learned.
Exactly what happened with Miami. Yeah, I'm not going to Alabama. No, I'm not going to Alabama. Oh, I've gone to Alabama.
But one thing for him, I mean, there's two sides, and I think what Seth is right about is if he took the job on the basis of having complete control, and if his control was impeded, then he will resent that. in a big way, and the other one is that he likes a challenge.
He's building his legacy. That's the thing. He's not going to have his legacy threatened. You know, everything that Belichick has ever done has been to get rid of players just before they peak or just after their peak. You know, Tom Brady's 40-and-a-half-year-old. He's basically been hit more often than he's been hit at any time, especially in the last month. The players dip, whether that's injuries, which I suspect it probably is, or it's just recovery time. I don't care how good your fitness guru is.
Well, he's had the week off, which is good news for him. He's got some players back, which is also good news. If Hogan's back, I mean, imagine what they would have been like if Edelman had been with them all season long, offensively.
Yeah.
Cooks, Cooks and Edelman and Gronk, tough to defend.
Exactly. But then on the flip side,
but he's the league's MVP, basically. I don't know if he'll get the award, but
you take him away out of that offense, and they're a very, very average team.
And
well-coached average team.
Yeah, and I think this is not as easy a game. I'm tempted to take, to look at the points in the Titans, although the Patriots are very, very good at covering double-digit spreads, as we saw against the Jets in the last week of the season. But the Titans do some of the things that bother the Patriots a lot.
Run the ball.
They run the ball up the middle. That's tough for New England. Branch is back, which ought to help them on that. Alan Branch has been out for, I think, 5 weeks.
It's cold. Do you ever want to tackle someone when it's cold?
Especially when it's a load like Derrick Henry. Yeah. Now, the thing with Derrick Henry is he's got to get up ahead of steam to be effective.
Yeah. He's a boom or bust player for me.
Weeks
he sort of
he's more Ron Dane, say, than Eddie George or something like that. Yeah. The other thing is defensively, they like to beat you up at the line of scrimmage, and the Patriots are a finesse blocking team, and teams that can be very aggressive with them in the front seven give the Patriots lots of trouble. You think of the Ravens in the good years when the Ravens could do that, the Steelers.
They're a different animal though now this season, I think. But that said,
the Titans are so limited offensively.
They are.
If you keep Mariota in the pocket and you control Henry, they've got almost nothing to draw on.
I think the one thing they have got going for him is he does work well off play action, if they can get that going.
Yeah, well, I mean, more to the point, and I don't know what Mike Mularkey means by exotic smash mouth, but they were running, Mariota won that game by running the ball. First from breakdowns, and then they started using him on what they used to do at the beginning of the season and last year on option plays, on actually designed run plays for him or for Henry off the pitch, and that's the Mariota we were looking for. My theory is he's been injured most of the season, and he hasn't played as well because of that, but he's played through injury.
Sam, what do you think of the Seth Wicker thing?
The Seth Wicker. Well, I think if you were going to say buying or selling, I'd say renting, because I'd like to.
That's a good one. Yeah.
I think there is got to be some truth. I mean, Seth hasn't just come into this sort of media game. He's
seasoned.
And I don't think he would.
Big stories before, and they've been absolutely spot on.
And I don't think he would, especially at this level. I mean, no disrespect to the Browns. If this was sort of animosity in the Browns, it's not worth me putting this out there. But the fact that it is the Patriots.
And the fact he's had so many sources as well, although unnamed sources.
He's claimed that, but the only way I can sort of look into that is if, when he says unnamed, I wonder how many of them were players. Because if it's players, you don't want to be putting the players under the bus, because that's your reputation gone, and they'll never let you anywhere.
Or likewise agents.
And if you're I suspect there's agent involvement there. But if you're players, you don't necessarily know what's going on behind the closed doors of the owner coach's room. There was one point where he had a line about Brady snapping at Josh McDaniels, and said, after it was like months of silent anger came to an end. Well, who knows that there was silent anger? Exactly. Besides Brady himself.
Yeah.
If he was silent about it.
So where does that come from?
Where does that come from? Giselle?
The agent.
But I think
it's fascinating. But I think
the reality of the Garoppolo situation was they weren't. I think Belichick thought they would be able to keep him. He thought the agent would be able to talk him into staying with starter money.
Yeah.
And Belichick was probably even more ready to deal with the salary cap issues that would involve having him and Brady. And I think it was only until
there was room to do that. That was the strange thing about it. And Brady's always been that way of thinking about the team. He has bought into the Belichick system.
Once they realized at the last minute, or almost the last minute, that he wasn't going to do that, I think Bill was less worried about getting the biggest haul he could and more worried about putting him in a good situation away from the AFC.
Sure.
And
he
did the same if you remember with Matt Castle and Mike Vrabel. He gave both of them to Andy Reid for a 2.
Yeah.
Right, which was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But he likes Andy Reid. He trusts Andy Reid. He knew Andy Reid wouldn't screw around with the guys.
Exactly
and the same thing with Kyle Shanahan.
The thing with the Garoppolo side of it, though, if you can see you've got a very good QB there in at number 2, shall we say. Now, a conversation goes a long way. Now, but also at the same time, Belichick, I don't know him personally, comes across very arrogant. And sort of, to be honest, I wonder if he was a bit naive, thinking he's sitting there in the background. He knows Tom's coming to the end of his career. You'll get your chance, but at the same time, you're sitting there on the side, and Tom's hardly out of the game.
The other thing is, I mean, the other dynamic is I've been in a room with Bob Kraft, and Brady's phoned, and it's absolutely spot on what Seth said about that. He's like a son to him, and he said he is like a son to me. Yeah. They're both Hollywood. You know, they're similar sort of characters. Belichick is a little more reserved, a little more refined, and yes, I think he's probably arrogant, but he's earned the right to be. He's always been that way.
And
but
if you're Jimmy G, you know in your heart that Brady's not going to leave until they drag his stiff body.
And the other thing, exactly, and the other thing is Brady wouldn't necessarily, from reading between the lines, Brady is not the sort of guy to actually coach up somebody that's going to replace him. And why would you?
No, but I mean, I think even if putting that aside, for me, I'm coming back to sort of Seth. I think he's obviously he's got some ammo there to put this out there. He's brave doing it with the Patriots who are at that level and in the limelight of everyone. My thing now, sort of going forward with this, is actually keep an eye on the Patriots and let's see what happens if they don't make the Super Bowl or don't actually win it, in fact, because I wonder if someone has got something somewhere, this will come out, and it might be if Tom leaves and retires with another Super Bowl ring, then I think that this story will be revisited and we'll see a lot more.
Bottom line is I see them going past this hurdle, but the question is if they get to the Super Bowl, can they get past the Steelers?
Just a quick, Bill Belichick always been a bit of a Giants man. He wanted to go back.
I know it won't happen.
That will happen?
No, I don't see it happening at all. Partly because they wouldn't be able to give him control. Not only is Dave Gettleman the general manager there now, but John Mara is very much involved in the personnel decisions. Apparently, in the whole coaching hunt, he's been running the thing. So I can't see him doing that.
Can we see an upset this weekend? 13.5-point favorites.
Doubtful. Yeah. I can see a way that the Titans can win, but I can't see them doing to the Patriots what they did to Kansas City in the second half. I mean, it was a brilliant drive, but it had a lot of luck involved too. There were penalties back and forth. And that
I think the Patriots will cover the spread as well. I think they'll go and dominate this game.
I think if anything's going to focus the Patriots, it's going to be what's been going on outside, and I think it's going to be a bit of a. It'll either be a sort of. I think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be a blowout, honestly. Yeah. I do. Let's have a look at the Jacksonville Jaguars at Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a really fascinating game. I mean, Pittsburgh lost 30-9 at home to the Jags in week 5, was it?
Week 5. Yeah. They led 9-7 at the half.
Yeah, interesting game. Jaguars coming to this as 7.5-point dogs. Yeah.
And to me that's high. To me, that's high. But what it's looking at is the Steelers have so many weapons. They're looking that they will be able to bust, at least 1, 2, 3 big plays during the game. Antonio Brown is supposedly back at full strength. He had a big game against Jacksonville, even in the loss, but no scores. It was 10 catches, 150 some odd yards. And Juju's come along since then. Martavis Bryant's always around, and Le'Veon Bell is there. So it's highly unlikely Ben comes out and throws 5 picks. Highly unlikely they can keep Bell bottled up the way they did. They held they held Buffalo to 3 points in a playoff game, which is a pretty big accomplishment. But they're off. The other side of the thing is their offense was so bad.
They've scored 20 points in the last 2 games.
Yeah.
And Blake Bortles has thrown for an average of 123 yards.
And it was 50-50 whether the officials were going to overturn the touchdown pass to Koyak. Anyway, and given when you look at the other balls that they've overturned, I was amazed they didn't. For me, it's a touchdown. I'm not contesting that, but I was just amazed that Alberto Riveron in New York didn't decide it wasn't.
On the flip side, Pittsburgh may well lose cornerback Artie Burns for a knee injury. They've already lost
His
Shazier
middle name
as well.
is Get. Artie gets Burns. But Hayden is back and
Hayden is
strength.
back. I mean, Shazier is obviously a major issue because the strength of the Jaguars is obviously going to be the running game, and he is dominant.
And interesting that the Steelers let James Harrison go after Shazier was hurt.
Yeah, and I don't quite get. I've always.
But he's not an
question
inside
mark.
guy. I mean, it's not the same position, but still, it's linebacker depth.
Well, and look what he's done.
He had one game, and it was a pretty good one.
Yeah,
not bad.
Pittsburgh 6-2 against teams with a winning record. They only lost by 3 to New England.
And could have won that game easily.
Yeah, they did.
Again, that was another one of those touchdown
Contentious
pass calls.
Jags are 4-1 in Pittsburgh against Big Ben, though, so they have a
That's
really good
interesting.
record.
That's
against
interesting
Big Ben. So this, for Ben to turn around and sort of say, "I've thrown 5 picks and I want to see them in the playoffs." I'd be careful what you wish for.
That's very interesting.
I mean, I have the Steelers to win. I don't think they'll cover the 7.5 spread though. I think it will be a lot closer than what people think. But I mean, there's them stats there are kind of sort of leading towards that. But it's your big game players and people that have been there before that get the job done. Having Antonio Brown out injured has probably helped them because, like you say, Martavis Bryant and Juju Smith, have now had their own time just to it's all on them. They've probably got a lot more sort of snaps themselves that actually, I think, bringing someone like Antonio Brown in, it's ridiculous.
No, it's a fair point. You've got to look though. A calf injury of that magnitude when that happened against New England. You've been out for 3 weeks now. Has it had time to heal? And you're going up against Jalen Ramsey and you're going up against AJ Bouye, who are, for me, probably
best pair
the
of
best
corners
pair
in
of
the league,
corners
easily. I mean, that's a great defense, and it's great because of that secondary makes the line better because it's hard to find guys open, and they've got 3 really fast linebackers who can move across the field. Miles Jack is a great player who's just starting to get recognition for it. But there's 2 words we haven't said, which have a big influence on how you pick this game.
Not Le'Veon Bell.
No, that's almost 3 words. 2.5. Blake Bortles.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because again, going back to the Nick Foles situation, how much faith do you have in Blake Bortles not turning the ball over or taking advantage of whatever opportunities the Pittsburgh defense allows them? If Fournette can run on them, which they can do against the 3-man
Fournette's been injured and he's been down, but then you look, he had goodness knows how many yards. It was 163 yards, something like that. He had 100. Trying to think off the top of my head, 181 yards actually it was in the first game.
90 on 1 carry.
Agreed. But
when they got tired at the end of the game.
But it's still the fact that Fournette is
the thing with
Pittsburgh's
defense is they've got a great front 3. Hargreave at nose tackle's tremendous. Haywood is one of the best players in the league this year defensively. I mean, all pro as far as I'm concerned. And Tuitt's pretty good on the other side, and he's been hurt this year. But behind them, especially with Shazier gone, what they want are 2 pass rushers on the outside backer spots. Guys aren't as great in coverage or against the run as their predecessors
But then
were.
Bortles on a play action, we could use that strength against them.
Let him run. Let the big horse run. That's like
exactly.
That's what worked.
You have to. So
tuck it.
Who have we got then? 7.5 points is the line.
Well, I'm gonna have to pick the Steelers on the game, but I think I agree 7.5. The Jags might be able to keep it close.
I'm looking at the potential for a few garbage time scores. So I'm going on the overs at 41. I think that's a fairly low line for the game of that.
Again, the key thing is what didn't happen last week with Buffalo. If the Steelers can put a couple of quick scores on the board, Jacksonville's in trouble.
Yes.
They're not designed to come up from behind. They have to keep the game close the whole way.
And then you've got to take chances. And it could be the other way. Rather than having 5 picks one way, you'd have 5 picks the other way. New Orleans against Minnesota. I mean, arguably the game of the week. The Saints are 5-point dogs going to Minnesota. They lost 29-19 back in a long time ago in week 1.
First week of the season.
Well, when they had Dalvin Cook and they had Sam Bradford, Minnesota Vikings, they don't have those guys this time, but it doesn't seem to have hurt them at all, does it?
No, I mean, Case Keenum's obviously come in and done a job, to be honest. And he's started to use people like Stephon Diggs a lot more. I think when he came in, it was like, right, I'm going to throw to sort of my tight end. and obviously Phelan's, been remarkable this year. But that was the chemistry. And then someone like Stefan was kind of out on the skirts and wasn't really being fed. I think the last couple of games, where they saw that they were going to progress, he started to work with that. Now, by doing so, here's another weapon. I still wouldn't fancy the Vikings. I still do fancy the Saints for this game. Purely, again, coming down to a bit of experience and watching how the Saints played last week. That was pretty convincing for me as a team that look like they can go and progress. But we've touched on it in previous games. Vikings have had the break, so does that play a big part in this game? Maybe.
Yeah, the Vikings are where Carolina is almost an improvisation team. Cam takes the ball and then you see what he can do. Minnesota is very much a schemed offense, and they work to get opportunities for those two wide receivers. I think you're right. Diggs needs to be more of a factor. Whoever Lattimore's on is going to have a tough time making. Well,
Thielen had about 153 yards against them in the first game, but that this is a season away.
Yeah,
this is a season.
Rudolph's back and healthy, and he's been a big part of that. McKinnon is the kind of guy who they kind of need to have a good game, a big game, because he can get to the outside. For an ex-quarterback, he catches the ball.
And bearing in mind, at the start of the season, you don't know what you've got. And this is the issue with the Saints. Their defense when they came to London, we knew they were a good defense, and that was week 4, week 5.
And they've lost a lot of guys off their defense, and I was pleasantly surprised with them against Carolina because I thought Klein, especially, he played a big part in the season. And when he was gone from the middle linebacker spot, I thought they might suffer a bit. But I think
they've been coached really well this year.
I agree on both sides of the ball. And then the question for the Vikings is stopping the run game. Everything for them. Now, last week Carolina stopped the run game pretty well. In fact, they even stopped most of the passing game to the running backs. But Drew Brees just came out and turned into the Drew Brees of old. And
they had about 70 yards between them, didn't they, Kamara?
Yeah, and that's a worrying thing if you're the Vikings.
But then the backup plan is Drew Brees. What a season he's had again. Just keeps doing it.
Who think you'd be saying that about the Saints and their running game? You just wouldn't expect that, and that's why that's what's frightening now about the Saints is adding that there. I actually like to point out someone like Michael Thomas as well. The guy.
He's led it. We had questions about him when Cooks went to.
Yeah, but he uses his basketball experience, I think, there.
For a second season receiving, he's had to lead the.
He was great last year, and people weren't noticing because the Saints weren't that good.
But, then Cooks.
I used to do. I did him at Ohio State back in my Eurosport days, and he was exceptional then. You could see the talent that he had. And it's not noticed because whenever people think about Minnesota's defense, they think about Mike Zimmer and the double A gap blitz. But they've actually got a really good secondary, 2 good safeties, and actually Smith's first team All Pro, and a great cornerback in Rhodes. So they'll present problems for the Saints. And the beauty of the Saints offensively, the whole time they've been with Sean Payton, is they never have a number 1 receiver who you can try to shut down. Thomas is as close as they have come probably to that.
I think Thomas matches up quite nicely with Rhodes. I've seen Rhodes a couple of times getting beaten on coverage this year. That I've sort of he's been a bit victimised, and it wouldn't surprise me if they picked on him. But it's just
it's a good matchup. I kind of like the Vikings at home. Okay. I'd like them more if it was an outdoor stadium.
They've won 6 of the last 7 meetings at home with the Saints, so it's another not a particularly great place. Minnesota 5-3 against teams with a winning record, and the Saints are 5-4 against teams with a winning record. So it's not there's not a great deal. They've both had fairly.
The Saints played. They played in a division with Carolina and Atlanta. So that's 2 teams there that they played 4 times, both with winning records.
So they may be better than the Bearful. And what I like about them is their swagger. They just seem to have that confidence about them, and maybe I wouldn't say overconfidence. You can't go to Minnesota and be overconfident. But 5-point favourites are the Minnesota Vikings. The under/over is 46.5. People are expecting a few points, but I'm actually going with the Saints +5. I think the 5-point start.
I'd be tempted by an under there, to be honest.
Would you?
Yeah.
Well, the Vikings
more of a defensive game than people think.
All right.
I'd take the New Orleans spread there on that one.
New Orleans for you as well. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's the betting show sorted out, and that's the team. I hope you have a wonderful weekend of great matchups. So, I mean, I've never seen a weekend where you want to watch absolutely every game for one reason or another, and it will come down to quarterbacks. Mike Carlson, Sam Morgan, Simon Millam, great chat as always. That's the games sorted out. We're going to have a look at the hurry up, a few quick fire questions after the break. Stick with us. We'll see you in a little while.
What's up? I'm James Palmer from NFL Network, and you're watching SportsHeads.
RedZoneSports.bet, the British home of American sports.
Hi, welcome back. This is the hurry up 5 quick fire questions. 5 minutes to get through them, and 2 fantastic guests as always. First question, chaps: Randy Moss or Ray Lewis for the Hall of Fame? Who have you got?
I'm going to go Randy Moss for now. I think Ray Lewis maybe needs to continue what he's doing away from the game a little bit and add maybe sort of a few more strings to his bow. But for me, Randy Moss this year.
Interesting, because I would have put the question Randy Moss or Terrell Owens, because I think one of them takes the votes away from the other in the wide receiver sweepstakes. So I'm going to say Ray Lewis, because I think Ray Lewis is as much as Moss a no-brain Hall of Famer, and I think Moss may lose some votes to T.O. and maybe not get in the first time. I think both of them go in, though.
I think both of them go in as well. I can't have Ray Lewis, so I'm going to have Randy Moss. There we are, despite his aversion to caterers in Minnesota. John Gruden has been named as the Raiders head coach. Do they make the playoffs next year?
I'm going to say yeah, because I think Gruden, I think he's overrated as a hire, but I think his biggest effect will be early. He's going to come in and change things around. And plus, they may have an opportunity here because the Chiefs will be somewhat in flux.
Yep.
New quarterback, perhaps. Denver, who's going to play quarterback? We don't know. San Diego right now are making noises like they're the number one challengers in that division.
But again, how long can the quarterback carry on playing?
Yeah, I mean, I just think I'm going to say no. I just think that it all's going to vary on what comes in the draft and obviously any trades that they do. But I just think he's been out of the game too long. I think for me, I know we can sit here and watch, and obviously Mike's got all the experience in the world. Put you
Not
in a head
as much as him.
No, but you know, you two have been doing the same things, really.
Yeah.
So what, we give you a head coach role, and then we say that you're going to.
Hey, I'll take it.
If
I only last 1 year, they still got to pay me.
They got to pay you. Yeah.
Take driving a coach job.
Yeah. So yeah, no for me.
Okay. I'm going to sit on the fence on that one. I think it's a really interesting hire. I think it energises a fan base that is a bit of a lame duck franchise at the moment. It's purely there to sell tickets, but you don't lose it. But
well, and you know, Mr. Quarterback Camp Guru and all that has never developed a quarterback. He won with Rich Gannon. He won with Brad Johnson. Guys who he helped along, but they were veteran quarterbacks that he pushed over the edge. I think he'll do the same with Derek Carr.
Rich Gannon is obviously coming straight out of the coaching booth, never having coached. Out of the broadcasting booth. Never having coached. Interesting, that.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd say that. I think it's interesting anyway. You don't have
Yeah,
to.
but he played under Tubby Raymond. Tubby Raymond was a great coach.
Come on, Simon.
Biggest impact on a team injury-wise this year? Who's been the major impact?
I mean, I come back down to my boys down at in Arizona. I think losing David Johnson there at the sort of start, massive effect. I think everyone expected a big year from him, and I think as soon as we lost him, our game just took a nosedive. And I think Bruce Arians probably knew at the back of his mind he was probably going to retire at the end of this year. So I think it shows you the effect that and what they're expecting. So it
shows
just
how
killed
good
our
a
game.
coach Bruce Arians is, because he adjusted as the season went on. They lost Carson Palmer as well, which is a big. I would have said David Johnson probably as well, but I could just as easily say Aaron Rodgers, obviously in Green Bay, huge effect, or Deshaun Watson, who when he was playing, Houston was a team you had to worry about. Exactly. When he wasn't playing, you didn't even have to think about it.
I think we automatically look at the two sort of quarterbacks.
Yeah,
you know, I think
but I think David Johnson, everything in Arizona revolved around David Johnson.
And coaching-wise, I think you touched on a good point. Andy Reid, I think, did a tremendous coaching job when Eric Berry went down. I think that's a big impact for me. Buying or selling Leonard Fournette to go for 120 yards or more against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the division playoff game?
No. I think he's taken a dip. So I don't see
betting question, that one.
It's I'm going to say no as well. I'm selling on that one. Although the Steelers are not a great run defense team, but he hasn't been running that great as well. The thing is, Fournette, like in the first game, wears you down. You know, his biggest run of the season might have been that 12-yard run on 3rd and 11 that got the Jags, you know, that clinched the playoff spot. And he does that because he's still strong toward the end of the game and your defenses are getting tired.
I think he's been hampered more by injury than people sort of realise this year, but after watching him last week, it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't go over
Chris
120
Ivory had
yards.
40 some odd yards in that game against Pittsburgh that he had 180, so that's 220. That's a lot of yards.
It is, and you can see them running the ball on them. I think that's the only way they're going to win anyway. Okay, who wins the Super Bowl? Final question.
Where did you pull
Put
that
you on
one
the
out?
spot.
Who wins
Struggling
the Super
for
Bowl?
questions.
Super Bowl to me becomes New England against Minnesota, and I'll say New England.
Okay.
I fancy Steelers this year. I still do. I think, especially if they get over the Jags this week, I think it will just show some strengths that people maybe doubted if they do get past the Jags. And I just think there's a lot on the Patriots, and I just think they're getting a little bit too beaten up, and the age, I think, will catch up. No disrespect.
So Steelers against who? Who do they beat in the Super Bowl?
That's a different question.
I sure know how to slow down a quick
Yeah,
fire
you've
round.
killed it. Yeah, so no, I'm going to, for the time, catch me next week.
Okay, makes sense. Makes
Yes.
perfect sense. You've got that opportunity.
Yeah.
I've said in Lindy's at the start of the season the Steelers were going to win, well, were going to make the Super Bowl against Green Bay. Obviously the Aaron Rodgers injury has scuppered that. I'm still going to stick with the Steelers then, and I think that Minnesota are probably the team to beat, although I'd love to see Atlanta in the Super Bowl again just to get a little bit shot at redemption.
Yeah, a rematch of Atlanta-New England would be really interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be. We'll see who wins that one. Great chat as always. Mike Carlson, Sam Morgan, Simon Millam. We've sort of hurried up this week. We can do better. We will try. We'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Here at Red Zone, we have a soft spot for American sports, especially NFL. It's as American as cheerleading. Unfortunately, when it comes to betting on gridiron, there is very little choice between bookmakers. That's because almost all bookmakers get their odds from Las Vegas. And we all know what happens in Vegas should stay in Vegas, especially their nasty odds. So, we're stripping back to basics, creating our own odds, giving you lucky punters the very best of British bookmaking for American sports. Would you like to see some more? RedZoneSports.bet, the British home of American sports.